is Donna.
Okay. And when were you born? What year were you born in?
I was born in 1957.
1957.
Yes.
And where did you grow up during your childhood years?
I grew up in a small town called Neenah, Wisconsin, in the Midwest.
Just give us a description of your childhood friends that you played with.
Through my childhood, my mother was Irish. She was born and raised in Ireland, so we had a lot of family over in Ireland. So we spent every other summer over in Dublin, Ireland. And that's where I would be mingling and experiencing the other cultures and the nationalities. Whereas back in my hometown in Neenah, everybody was white.
Okay.
And
were there any Native Americans in the area? Any Native Americans that you heard of?
There were Native Americans. There are reservations that are not far from here, maybe about 60 miles from here. But as far as right in my community, no, there were not.
So no other people of color. So pretty much almost 99% or 100% white American?
I'd say 99%. Catholic school, Catholic grade school, upbringing. And yes, we weren't exposed to any other colors or nationalities, or it was just all, like you said, all American white.
Yeah. And then what about childhood games, like when you guys were little, coming out of school, elementary school? What kinds of games would you guys play when you were little?
Games? Oh, geez, just like riding our bikes around, kick the can, hide and go seek, board games. A lot of, in the summer, a lot of swimming at the local pool, swimming pool.
And when your playmates were boys and girls, obviously, boys and girls.
Playmates were boys and girls, yes. Yeah.
And then, as you think back, what would you say are one or two stories of your earliest memories of someone pointing out that there is a difference or a perceived difference between a person of color, like a black person, and then a white American?
The first time would have been one of the summers that we were heading over to Dublin, and I had an aunt and uncle that lived in New York, and so we'd stop in New York, my mother's sister, and spend a few days in New York. And we took a train and ended up in Harlem. Yeah, so we were escorted out by the police.
And about how old were you?
How old? I'd say about 12.
Okay. And then you accidentally ended up in Harlem?
Accidentally ended up in Harlem. And of course, I'm just, it was like these colored people. And I'd seen, like, over in Dublin, we'd see them in city center because Dublin's, like a few million, the population.
Okay.
So I'd been exposed to the other, like I said, nationalities and colors, but just not in the United States or anywhere that I was, right? So it would have been in Harlem, and I was shocked to see so many that we were the minority in these crowd of Afro-Americans. Now, the thing is, we were raised, again, like I said, with my mom being Irish. She would talk about when she was younger, well, actually, once she was out of school, and she moved over to London to find work. And so over in London, they'd have signs in front of the businesses that would say, "No blacks or Irish need apply." So she was exposed to being shunned, or yes, just like the blacks were. And so we were raised to know that there's a big world out there, and there's all different cultures and nationalities, and everybody's equal. That was how my upbringing was. I was intrigued by seeing people of color, and thinking, oh, are they different? They're so different. Their color is different. but they must be the same as us.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was more of just a shock that they had a different color skin, but it wasn't that I was afraid of them or I
Right.
didn't want to be near them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's more than just one color. All right, so when I was 18, that would have been around well, actually I was 17, so 1975, it was the year that I graduated. I was the one that took the call from my aunt to let us know that my uncle had been murdered down in Florida. That was an Afro-American that did kill him. We don't really know what the motive was because his wallet was still on him. But that did not change my thoughts or my views on Afro-Americans. It was just, it was a bad person. My other aunt, who also lived in the Chicago area, her and my uncle were separated for like 10 years. They were originally, my aunt was from Ireland. My uncle was originally from England. Of course, they lived together in Ireland, but he was afraid to come over to the United States because a lot of people at that time would think of America as everybody owning guns and it's all killings and crime and, you know, like the John Wayne cowboy movies, right? But after 10 years, he finally, as a matter of fact, one of the times we were over in Dublin, we went to see if we could talk him into coming over here to be with my aunt, and he was still afraid. But so anyhow, he finally came over, and in under a year, he was mugged and he was stabbed several times. Really? And it was a black man for $30. They did catch him, and so I don't know what he got for prison time. And my uncle did not die, but his whole life changed. He became a recluse. He was afraid to leave the house. And again, it didn't turn me towards hating Afro-Americans or being afraid of them, because again, I just thought that's another terrible, horrible person.
Right.
And my uncle did live then for several years, but he was housebound and you know, on oxygen. And
did he continue to live in the United States, or he went back?
He continued to live in the United States. He was too sick. He stayed with my aunt. He needed her care. Yeah, he really didn't have much value or quality of life after that, which was, like I said, really very sad. When I did get out of high school, because I was going to be getting into the travel profession, and I'd traveled from the time I was an infant in arms, and it hadn't been just Ireland. I mean, we were in other countries overseas, because that was just the type of family, that was my life, right? Because of my family. I've family in Australia and Ireland and South Africa, but so I don't see color. I see color, but I don't.
What do you feel makes you see things the way you do? You know, the way you do.
I believe that it was my upbringing. It was because my parents didn't have any hatred towards anyone of another race or color, because I'd been raised to have open eyes to the world, that it wasn't just this little small town, white bread, white family community. Right. There was a big world out there, and to embrace it and accept people, because no one is better than the next person. And so that I truly believe that it was the way I was brought up.
Right.
Never really challenged. It did. I'm thinking I had a cousin who went into the Air Force. Again, this would have been in the 70s, the late 70s. And she married an Afro-American. She was white, right? Her husband was Afro-American, and it was like, oh, we have a black man in our family now. You know, that was about it.
Yeah.
And all, they've got beautiful kids, and they're still together, as far as I know. So, you know, that's like 30 some years, 40.
Right. Right.
No, I don't have any other really big stories I can tell you of having issues with going over to a friend's house and that there were any fights or there was anything between kids because there were different colors and different nationalities.
Right. Right.
I was
Hmm.
just in a small town white community.
Wow. Very, very interesting.
I have a lot of friends that are Afro-American. As a matter of fact, I have one friend a couple of years ago. He was down in a larger city,
Hmm.
and he was pulled over on a busy street in the middle of the day for, I don't know if it was a light or he was maybe going over the speed limit, but he was strip searched on the street. He was a black man, strip
Wow.
searched on the street in front of all the vehicles, everybody. And
Really?
he filed a lawsuit and he wanted to go after the city. And his attorney started getting his attorney was threatened that his family would be harmed. My friend was his family was threatened to be harmed if he pursued it. So
Um,
yeah.
and then that leads us to the last question, which is, how do you see the future?
I'm scared. I'm worried for the future. I don't know if I've had my head in the sand, although I thought that I had eyes wide open, but I didn't realize just how bad it has gotten until, of course, the George Floyd
Hmm.
and this KKK and whites
Hmm.
hating blacks and blacks hating whites. And I'm I don't know how the future is going to be. Like I said, I'm really worried. I feel like we've gone back to, like hundreds of years back, or back,
Right.
not hundreds, but like we've gone backwards, and it
Hmm.
scares me, and I don't know how we can come together again.
Hmm. Hmm.
I hope that we can, but I just feel that the hatred is so strong right now. And I don't feel that hatred because there's bad people in all colors.
Hmm.
And I fear for, like I said, the future and our children and our grandchildren. I hope that it settles down, but right now the country scares me. And so for me, life is, aside from my upbringing and the international background, I value life and I value each individual because everybody's somebody's mother, brother, sister,
Right.
grandparent.
Hmm.
And so I respect everybody equally. And I think that's my outlook on life. And that's why don't
Hmm.
I don't understand this animosity. I hear that people of color, that they don't have as many opportunities, and it's like, I can't believe that in this day and age that this is happening, but it is.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
And like I said, I didn't think I had my head in the sand, but it's still very, very prevalent today,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
And
don't
you
know.
would think that we're right now, as we do this, we're in towards the end of 2020 going into 2021.
This just not this summer. Actually, it was I'm sorry, it was a year ago. I forget, with this pandemic, we haven't done anything all summer. So it would have been a year ago.
Hmm.
I went with a friend to see, went to a restaurant. It was an outdoor cafe, and they had a nice band, a blues band, like a three-piece.
Hmm.
It's a beautiful night. There were mainly people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. So it was a, quiet, laid back crowd. And a couple came in, or came back to where the dining was. Had just finished eating, and a couple came up to us, excuse me, a girl and a guy, and they were Afro-American, and she asked if they could sit with us. And of course we said, sure, you can sit with us. No problem. We're enjoying the music and just kept listening to music. And she bent, she leaned over into me, and she was probably in her 30s. He was probably in his, it's hard to tell, maybe late 40s. And she said, "Do you have any black friends?" And she black or Afro-American. Do you have any black friends? And I said, as a matter of fact, yes, I do. I'm thinking that's kind of odd. Why are you
Yeah.
asking this? And then she said, "Have you ever had them at your dinner table?" And I said, "Well, actually, yes, I have." And she said, "How long ago?" I said, "Well, it hasn't been for quite a while. I have a lot of friends that are black, and when we get together, we're friends. We talk on the phone, but we just haven't done anything." She said, "I knew it. You're one of those. You don't like black people." And then she
Really?
jumped up, and the chair tipped over, and he jumped up, and I looked at my friend like, "What's going on here?" We left because it was like she was trying to start a fight. "Oh, I see. You're one of those white folks that don't like black people."
And then take it as far
Right,
as
right.
jumping up and making a scene, or
A
something.
scene.
Yeah, yeah, that's shocking. That's shocking to me. That I don't understand why someone would do that.
I didn't understand it either, but it just makes me think there are people out there, both white and black, that just because of the color of your skin, they don't like you. And
Mm-hmm.
so we right away we got up and we started to leave, and the band was just going on break, and one of them must had seen, the little bit of commotion where she jumped up and the chair tipped over. And he said, as we're walking out, "What was happening there?" We just said, "Oh, it's just, they're
Mm-hmm.
giving us a hard time." And they said that they would go and have the owner kick them out. And we just, "No, don't do that. We're just leaving." So we
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to
Mm-hmm.
stay. It was like, not, that was enough. I'm out of
Mm-hmm.
here. But that's what's scary, is that people, and maybe again, with the head in the sand, has this been going on all along?
Right.
And I just haven't noticed it, or it hasn't affected me directly, and it did last year.
Mm-hmm.
And it was scary
Mm-hmm. And were
because you don't know
there?
if they have weapons.
Right, right. You don't know. You don't know what it's gonna lead to. Were there?
Right.
What was the crowd like? Was the crowd a mixed crowd, or was 50-50? 50% black, 50% white, or they were the
All
only
white,
two,
only two black
and it was
people.
those two were the only blacks, and then they sat next to you and then asked you the questions. Man,
Yes.
that
Isn't that weird?
that's weird, shocking, unbelievable.
Sad.
Yeah,
It's frightening.
but to pick a random person in an audience, and I can't even explain the intent, what they wanted to happen, or the purpose, or I don't know. I can't even.